Yes, Canby, this is the first official meeting of a civic body by our new administrator, Scott McClure. Welcome, Scott. Thank you.
In this role, he is
In this role, Scott is our agency administrator, and in city council, he's our city administrator. So there you go. He gets both faces of us. So there we go. All right. Does anybody have any additions or corrections to the work session minutes from August 7th?
Do not.
See none? All right.
motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Hodson and seconded by Commissioner Hensley to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the August 7th, 2019 URA work session and URA special meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Seeing none, that carries 7-0. Next up, we have new business, a facade improvement application. Jamie, you going to do that? Oh, Calvin's going to do it tonight. All right.
And I'll have Chad Johnson, the applicant, join me if that's all right.
All righty.
So Chad, just earlier this year, submitted an application for our facade improvement program, which is matching funds for facade improvement. He owns the property at 381 Southwest 1st Avenue, right next to El Cholito, if that helps. It's home to 3 businesses.
Correct.
Including his, which is State Farm. And his application is for matching funds to support the construction or installation of new windows and the installation and hardware and mounting materials for a new sign that Chad has. So he's met all the requirements of the program. We have bids, 3 competitive bids for both of the services being construction services being applied for, and so our department does recommend the matching funds be awarded for this property.
And so what's the amount of matching funds the agency will award in this case?
The program is for up to $25,000, although this application will not necessarily use all of that, although the motion would be to approve up to $25,000, which would be 50% match to what Chad would be investing into the improvements.
So our exposure would be $25,000 if Mr. Johnson spends $50.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And in this case, it looks like it's closer to 23, 24?
Around there, yeah. It's
Okay.
between 15 and 25.
50% there. And can you remind us, Calvin, or feel free to look at Jamie, what the scope of the facade improvement program is?
Sure. So the facade of the building is actually anything you can see from the street, and this program provides matching funds to improve the facade. There are some restrictions, including that we don't pay for signage. So in this case, Chad already owns a sign and is having it refurbished, and we're helping out with the installation so that hypothetically, if the property changed hands at any point, we would not be out of money in a sense, having spent money on the sign, but the hardware and mounting material would remain and be useful to the next business that might occupy the space. Mm-hmm. And windows do qualify, as does paint, awnings, doors, thank you, lighting, and anything that makes the facade of the business more appealing and better for the community.
Good job.
Thank you.
I just wanted everybody to have a reminder. We have some new folks here. We haven't done a lot of facade improvements and it hasn't been on camera in a while. So do we have any commissioners with questions, comments?
Well, just a comment. Thank you for doing this. That block began, I think, with some work by Total Car Care, and they upgraded their area. Also, I think the council deserves some credit for 8 years ago passing the 99 beautification plan, which requires any new development to be up to certain standards. We saw that with O'Reilly's, we saw that with the Fred Meyer, both of those coming in. And so I really support this, and Calvin, if you find an extra minute in your day next week of wandering down the street to Canby Mufflers, and be sure and tell them about the wonderful things about this facade program.
Okay, sure.
Any other question?
Yeah, and to your point, this is on Highway 99E, of course, and we know that it's as a gateway to the community, it is our more challenging gateway just in terms of appearances. So this would certainly go towards improving that gateway to Canby.
So the URA's contribution on this one is just the windows and the sign mounting? then,
Yeah,
right?
primarily it's the majority of the funds would be going towards new windows on all the front, well, on all parts of the facade of the building. And then the installation and hardware and mounting material for the signage is only about $1,200 in most of the bids.
And the old letters are coming down, and
What was that again?
the old block letters are coming down, and the new signs. going
Yes,
up.
and yeah, on the building for sure, yes. And they're, actually, I think there's one already falling off.
There's a small
Eager to leave.
small discount for that.
Proactively.
Yes.
Proactively
Yeah,
bring yourself down.
yeah. And I do plan on removing the tree in front of my main window, so you can see the sign more clearly.
See your sign.
And that was a Butch Neff commemorative tree when Butch Neff had passed away. And that tree's gotten so big that I'm gonna replace it with another tree with the same commemorative sign to honor Butch Neff.
There you go. That's very nice. All righty. Any other questions from the agency?
No, sir.
No? So, Melissa, I neglected to find, it's page 5, right, is the recommended motion? The packet? Sounds right? All righty.
Sure, she said.
So I'll take a motion.
Anybody have page 5 out?
I do.
I move to approve the matching grant of up to $25,000 for Chad D. Johnson under the guidelines of the Canby Facade Improvement Program.
I'll second that.
All righty. It's been moved by Commissioner Berge, seconded by Vice Chair Hodson, to approve the matching grant of up to $25,000 for Chad D. Johnson under the guidelines of the Canby Facade Improvement Program. Any further discussion? All those in, pardon?
Nope, just very excited. It's
All
great.
those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? The motion carries.
Can I just say something off the record or on the record, however you would prefer?
going to be
It's on the record,
so-
but go ahead.
I just want to pat both of these people on the back for helping me out. I know that when we were trying to get the last bid in on the sign hardware,
Sure.
I was on the road, couldn't quite communicate with the third bid, and Calvin did a great job of helping me out with the third bid here in Canby. We faxed some information over and finally got the bid in on time, and without his help, I don't know that that last portion could have been possible, but it was just a fantastic show of customer and just really good support of us as, business, here in Canby. It was very, very good customer service, and I appreciate that.
Great. Thanks, Chad. That's good to hear. Nice job, Calvin.
And likewise, great working with you. So
Jamie?
look forward to
Good to go.
continuing that.
Awesome.
Very good. All right, one last opportunity for any citizen input, and seeing none out there. Mr. Administrator, is there any other business for the agency to deal with tonight? All right, we'll take a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Ooh, I think Tracy just squeaked in. So it's been moved by Commissioner Hensley, seconded by Commissioner Barwig to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and we are adjourned. All right, Canby, that's a good night from the Urban Renewal Agency. Stay tuned. In 18 short minutes, City Council will be up. See you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's really good.
Good evening, Canby. Welcome to the October 16th, 2019 City Council regular meeting. If you'll please stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. And just for tonight's invocation, please just a moment of silence for our community, especially those that are, as many of you know, Ellie Shorter in our community has been diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she's a senior at Canby High School and just beginning a long battle here with cancer. So just keep her in your thoughts, and those others in our community that are dealing with long-term ailments and illnesses, and that they just heal and find peace. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we move into our Hometown Hero presentation, I'd like everyone to introduce you to Scott McClure. He's our new city administrator. Tonight is his first official city council meeting with us. So, Scott, this is everyone and everyone at home. Welcome aboard, sir.
And we introduced Melissa.
And we did introduce, and Melissa's also a new face, but she started with us the last meeting. So some new faces on the dais, and then there's Joe.
And then there's Joe.
Can we give him a hand? Yes. No, lots of new faces coming on board with the city team, and Scott, we're very, very excited to have you here, and really looking forward to getting down to it and keeping things moving along. So, welcome, sir. Next on the agenda is the Hometown Hero Presentation Award. So, I'm just going to read through this, give everyone a little background here on the Hometown Hero Award. So the Canby City Council has established the Hometown Hero Program as a means to provide official recognition from the city for those individuals or organizations who, through their unselfish efforts, contribute in some significant manner to the quality of life in the community and/or to community betterment and the advancement of community goals and vision. The award program is an ongoing process with nominations and recipients being recognized throughout the year. Award recipients will be presented with a certificate from the city in recognition of their specific deeds, actions, or contributions to the Canby community, which fall within three categories. These three categories are community involvement, in recognition of volunteer service and activities which promote the welfare of the citizens of Canby and the Canby community. The second is community leadership, in recognition of those individuals who have assumed a positive leadership role in the community and whose leadership activities have resulted in the advancement of the goals of the community, the enhancement of the community's quality of life, economic vitality, and/or livability. And finally, noteworthy citizen actions, in recognition of acts or act of a private citizen which are above and beyond the normal responsibilities of citizens and that result in a positive event or outcome of benefit to the community. Such actions include acts of heroism, significant donations of financial resources to fund community programs or projects, and other humanitarian acts. In addition to the award recipient receiving a certificate from the city, a special plaque will be placed on display at City Hall with an engraved nameplate of each recipient of the Hometown Hero Award. Nomination for the Hometown Hero Award program must be submitted in writing to City Hall. The letter of nomination should include the following: nominee's full name and address, home and business telephone number, nominee's occupation and/or title, name of the nominating person or persons, detailed examples of the nominee's contributions to the Canby community using the criteria listed above, 3 letters of support for the nominee from members of the community. Eligibility for the Hometown Hero Award is not limited to residents of the community. Any non-resident whose actions meet the above criteria in any of the 3 award categories is eligible to receive the award. Nominations will be reviewed by the mayor and city council as they are received, and recipients of the Hometown Hero Award will be officially recognized at a city council meeting where they will be presented their certificates by the mayor. So I will turn it over to Councilor Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to read my nomination letter. I think it'd be easier than trying to shoot from the head, because as I've demonstrated over the last few weeks, I get a little emotional on these things, so I'm just going to read. Mr. Mayor, it is with much appreciation that I have the pleasure of nominating Greg Perez for our Hometown Hero Award. The criteria for this award is community involvement, community leadership, and/or noteworthy citizen actions. Greg checks all of these boxes. He has given of himself selflessly to this community time and time again. He has given immensely his time, talent, and treasure to help ensure the success of so many of our community events. I have seen many times that he is the first to arrive on the scene to get things set up. He works tirelessly through the events, and he's the last to go home after it's all cleaned up and done. Greg is our small town feel personified. He truly is our hometown hero.
So, yes, definitely worthy of applause. So some letters here of support for Mr. Perez. It is with real sense of joy to support the nomination of Greg Perez as Canby's next hometown hero. Greg loves Canby and works diligently to preserve the character and charm of this amazing community. He lives a can-do life that does not accept defeat when working to develop new ideas or events that fit the Canby lifestyle. When thinking about the criteria of a hero, it is someone who cares about others more than oneself. Greg is that guy. He is unusually generous with his time and resources and always finds a way to get things done. I am proud to know Greg and call him my friend. He is an outstanding model of a real hometown hero. Signed, Mallory Gwynn. Dear City Council, the City of Canby Public Works Department would like to take the time to thank Greg Perez and support a nomination for the Hometown Hero Award. Greg has been an asset for the many activities and events which take place in the City of Canby. Greg is always supportive and helpful during these many enjoyable events and making them a huge success. We are very lucky to have him in our community, and he has been an enormous support for Public Works. Signed, your Public Works Department. And finally, it is my pleasure to endorse the nomination of Greg Perez for our Hometown Hero Award. His service spent with the United States Army is only the tip of the iceberg for what he has done selflessly for us. I have been part of this community now for the last 7 years. When I started our business here, he was the first to come, introduce himself, and take me around to meet the other business owners in town. As time went on, I noticed that there was not an event in town that he was not giving his time to. He was part of everything. I am sure there are far more Canby citizens that know him than not. I once spoke of an idea of a street dance with him, and before I knew it, he had organized a group of people that could help make it happen. He is the guy that gets things done even when he has no skin in the game. He is an amazing individual who gives himself selflessly for the better of the community. It is people like Greg that makes our community so special. I am so blessed to have him as a friend. Signed, Ken Arigotti, owner of Backstop Bar and Grill. Greg, you want to come up here and so we can present you with your plaque, or
If you don't mind my tears.
yeah?
At least I'm not the only one crying now.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody. This is an honor, but it's not me. It's everybody that's included. The city that supported me, Public Works, Jerry Spencer was always there with me late, and I couldn't thank everybody for all their help because it wasn't one person doing this. I had a lot of support and a lot of help from everybody else.
Those letters. Here is your official certificate. And for those of you that have not seen this plaque before, this hangs up in City Hall. And so it has some pretty distinguished people on here. This last was done in 2017 to recognize Walt Daniels, who's been on the City Council for a long time. But there's a lot of really great names on this plaque that have given, as Tracy said, Councilor Hensley said, where'd you go? There you go. Time, resources, and treasures to make Canby a great community. And so this Now, Greg Perez, Community Leadership, October 16, 2019. There you are, sir.
Thank you so much.
Greg, did you want to get the family and get a picture here real quick?
Sure. I didn't even know they were here. Other people knew about this and I did.
And that's a hard thing to make happen for the unofficial mayor of Camden.
I tried to find out last week. Oh, come on, smile.
My tears are holding. All right, we got business to take care of here.
Okay. I have Kleenex up here, Greg, if you need them.
I got one.
All right, perfect. Well, we'll move into then on our agenda some communications here. Mr. City Manager, any communications here for us right now? All right. We'll move into our first opportunity for citizen input and community announcements. So this is the opportunity for audience members to address the city council on items not on the agenda. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. Please complete a comment card, the yellow one's there in the back. Please fill it out and bring it to Melissa, our city recorder, and then she'll pass it on to me, and we'll give you an opportunity to address the council. If there's something that we can address now, we will. If not, we'll set aside, and myself and city administrator will figure out what we need to do next steps to answer any questions that you may have. First up is Mr. Taylor regarding Maple Street.
Hey, could I let John go first and then follow him?
Sure can. I can switch that up. Is that Mr. Gunther?
Speaking.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yes. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. Not walking too well. Could you take some of these and pass them down? Is there anyone this one on this side, please? I'm John Gunter. I currently reside at 930 Northeast 34th Place. I've lived there for the last 33 years. I believe I'm a retired civil construction estimator with more than 40 years in the construction field. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the 7-acre subdivision, your city file number SUB 17-05. I last spoke to the council January 17th, 2018 during the public hearing for the appeal of the Planning Commission approval of the subdivision. At that time, the council upheld the Planning Commission ruling with the addition of one condition of approval, which stated that the applicant must comply with all the conditions of the Canby Landing Conservation Easement. The sheets I passed out address that particular condition of approval. Sheet 1 is a copy of page 38 of the original application as approved by the Planning Commission October 23rd, 2017. It's sheet 3. Sheet 2 is that same sheet enlarged to show the sanitary and stormwater connections to the City of Canby utility system, which those connections are located within the conservation easement. Sheet 3 is the additional condition of approval added by the City Council as page 47 of the Notice of Decision, Final Order, and Approval of City File Number SUB 1705 7-acre subdivision. Sheet 4 is the first page of the settlement agreement between ODF&W and the applicant, Canby Development LLC, stating that ODF will not permit the construction of water/sewer lines in the conservation easement area. As the condition of approval that you added, when you approved this, currently, that condition cannot be met. And as such, would like to tell you that the thing should be dead right now.
Okay.
If it's a condition of approval and it can't be done, then it can't be approved. And so we'd like to recommend that you, I don't know what the process is, but tell the applicant that he's not able to fulfill his condition and that he either has to resubmit or withdraw. And I'd like to leave that with you people to discuss. So I'm sure that there will be some discussion. And I want to thank you for giving me the time. And I appreciate your attention. And I'm hopefully that you will do what I consider to be the right thing.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Mr. Taylor. How are you, sir?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Scott Taylor. I live at 2307 North Maple Street in Canby. I've testified before both the Planning Commission and the City Council appeal on the development at the end of Maple Street. I had the pleasure of serving on the City Council for 18 years. The last 8 as mayor. I also served on the utility board after leaving the council, so I have some idea of the kind of daily opportunities you have to read and to study and to make decisions. I also spent 45 years in the corrections field, and we learned that procedural fairness was a key principle in helping folks accept the court's decision. It is the honoring of the process to be open and clear. This feels more like a because you can decision. I would offer that the lack of communication with those of us on Maple Street has been a consistent theme. While you may not have been required to communicate by law, it seems you might have had a good faith effort to keep us informed. We have heard most of the ongoing decisions and actions through rumor, or in my case, a check with former Councilor Height, who then, with Mr. Brown, answered some questions I had. This causes us to think that the process is not a transparent one, and each new negative development magnifies that impression. I already testified that the agreement with Oregon Fish and Wildlife and Bonneville administration took years to negotiate. And I want to say years. It took most of my term as mayor, and then it wasn't until Mayor Prince was in his first year that he actually got to sign the agreement. It was a hard-worked agreement. And that was set up so we could buy the old logging road and the property. We were of the opinion that Canby would continue to grow and that protected natural space would grow more scarce. That agreement had some very clear environmental protections in it, and after years of work, it was finally signed in 2002. That is old history, and you may not be aware of what it took before Mayor Prince could sign that and to receive the funding to go ahead and purchase the property. We have certainly seen the growth that we thought would occur, and as I look around town, we are not done. The rerouting of both sewer and stormwater is a critical shift in the conditions of approval, as John has testified, and the conditions of this approval were not followed. We thought you put these conditions in place at the appeal hearing we attended 18 months ago, and these adjustments have been known for some time. Several of you indicated at that time that if you could find a reason not to approve this plan, you would vote against it. We would say this is an opportunity to reconsider and ensure the plan still makes sense to you. I question the decision that will be in the public interest or good. If you continue forward, I would hope that system development charges for this construction project will pay for any and all road work, new sizing of piping, as you dig up 34th Street and go down that. I do not think my taxes and fees support this. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that. Doug Poppin? Poppin. Also about the 7 acres. Evening, sir, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Mayor and council members, my name is Doug Poppin. My home address is 3220 North Maple Street, Canby. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight during your citizens' communication agenda. I fully realize that it would be impossible for you to be fully involved in all of the details of your department's issues and the staff that are doing the work. That being said, we believe you should be made aware of a few issues. I agree with and I support what my two neighbors have said tonight. It is quite clear to me and to our neighbors up and down North Maple Street, 34th Place Street, and the side streets that at least two of the most important conditions contained in your approval of the application now have no process in place for the removal of wastewater and sewage plants. These are essential services, and they are in substantial deviation from the plan that was approved both by the Planning Commission and the City Council. Secondly, I am struck as to how the city was not aware of the conservation easement prior to the approval of the 7 acres property. How can it be that there were no elected officials, no city employees, or no commission members that could remember such a significant and progressive act of the city? There is a 189-page master plan that was produced and put together in partnership with the City of Canby, the State of Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, the Trust for Public Land, Bonneville Power Administration, and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. These agencies work together for the sole purpose of developing a conservation easement to possess our natural, scenic, educational, recreational, and fish and wildlife values, which obviously is of great importance to our citizenry. This was a major undertaking. It came also with a caveat of numerous prohibited actions, not the least, no construction in this 100-acre parcel. Nobody recalled this master plan during the application process. It tends to make me and others wonder who's watching the farm. If you would choose to review this master plan, and I encourage you to do so, the plan shows that the proposed development site as a potential future park property. This master plan is an amazing achievement. I believe that the application would be more than likely have been denied if somebody spoke up to this conservation easement. Lastly, I wish to speak to the lack of communication by the planning department to seemingly anyone other than the applicant. When there is a lack of communication, rumors abound. Would it be too much to ask the department to send out a brief informational letter letting us know about major developments, such as the settlement agreement with the ODFW, or that development plans and impacts may greatly involve 34th Place? It would take them less than 5 minutes to simply send out a letter outlining the current status of the development. I'm sure that the city is short-staffed, but a few minutes to type a letter would go a long way to building trust with the city. It's been almost 2 years in the making with no end in sight. Transparency is supposed to be a government value. I'm done. Thanks for listening to me. Please get back to us as to what steps you'll be taking. I know we'll appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Scott, welcome to Canby. This is, I'm a little tongue-in-cheek with that, but I mean, this is a big development piece. It's, as the gentleman has stated, has been a bit of a contentious project due to, I think, not just the easement piece, but a few other aspects. Unfortunately, it's great that we've got Ryan and Brian here this evening. If I can task you gentlemen with getting together and figuring out, because I wasn't aware of the ODF decision here as well. I know that we've gone through all the the LUBA pieces, and I don't think there's any more appeal pieces regarding this development. So if we could put this in your two hands to, Brian, maybe bring Scott up to speed on this project in short order so that we can get these items figured out. And I'm not sure where the applicant is in the process. I don't know. That'll be something that I'm going to have to ask you guys to sort out and bring back to us hopefully sooner than later, please. Councilor Parker, you have something to say?
In addition to the issues that were brought in front of us, I would also like you to take a look at a systems question, and that's when a land use decision has been made and there are subsequent changes. If we don't have a formal method to loop that information back, I'm willing to propose an ordinance that does that, because I'm still trying to get my head around what you all were talking about tonight. But when we have developments like this, and if there are adjustments to it, I'd like to at least get a feedback so that I learn about it internally instead of having to rely upon citizens to do that. So there's the immediate question of what's going on, how does it relate to the conditions that the council approved. That's one. But then also a systems thing. Is there a better way for us to internally provide this information back to both the Planning Commission and to the council?
Yeah, that's a great point, Greg, and I think that there's systems in place in terms of with those decisions regarding these appeals being made, and whatever the decision then being, whatever's been handed down, it's on the applicant then to make those adjustments and changes, and therefore it ends up back in their lap to figure out, okay, what's next? Are we done? Are we making a change? And if so, then we need to reapply. And I think that might be something that maybe Ryan and Brian can work on and bring back to us in terms of that clarity for us, just to make sure that that's where this is at in process, and not just in limbo. Does that seem to be fair there?
And once we get a report back on what's going on, I think I can more precisely refine what it is that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
If there are adjustments that are made administratively within conditions of approval that are done at the department level, maybe we need to review that, at least so that we get the communication back, because this is all news to me right now.
Perhaps I could just elucidate for a second so that you guys can feel better about the process, which is this case, as you all know, went up to LUBA. The application that you saw and the result of the hearing that was before this body was affirmed by LUBA, subsequently appealed to Court of Appeals, was affirmed by the Court of Appeals, and then that opinion was, the review was denied by the Oregon Supreme Court. And so the same exact decision that you guys made is upheld. So that's the city's part. The applicant, it's up to the developer to work with ODFW, and they subsequently have an agreement between the developer and ODFW. The city's not party to that. So in a sense, you guys know exactly what you know because your decision was upheld, and nothing has changed in that regard.
Okay, so then can we do this, because I know that, can we then maybe look at getting this as an agenda item, either for us to get, I don't know, maybe it starts with you, staff, figuring out, is there something that we need to be updated on in that regards to this decision? If not, then I don't know if it's a matter of reaching out to the applicant to figure out where this is all at, because we need to provide answers on this piece. I believe we do.
I could provide what I know. It's somewhat speculative, but that, you know, if they're trying to get sewer and wastewater access going in the development, there are a couple of different ways they can do that, depending on whether somebody wants to sell them easement across their land or whether they have to go through the public right-of-way. And so the discussion, from my understanding, is that they are, trying to work with neighbors to sell them easement so that it's a shorter distance and less onerous. But if they can't get that, they can always go through the city right-of-way in order to plug into the system.
So based on that, then the city right-of-way is what's being called out here in the information we just received?
Well, that would be 34th Street, I believe, is what they were mentioning.
34th Street, okay. Not this Greenway easement that,
Well, my understanding of the ODFW contract with the developer is that they don't get to have the easement for any of the wastewater or the sewer.
okay.
And so, it's up to them to locate a different way of doing
Figure out a
that.
different way.
But I mean, this is their development, and it's up to them to get either the easements across people's property or to get, the public right-of-way to get to the sewer.
So Joe, what you're saying is, sorry to interrupt you, this map that we're looking at here may not be the actual, how it is actually constructed, correct?
Yeah, I'm unaware of whether that is an accurate map or not.
Okay.
And we
So
can
that's
look into
probably what
that.
we need to find out first from the developers. What other way are they planning on going with that?
And by what Joe's saying, it sounds like that's where they're at right now, is figuring out a plan C. Counselor Spoon.
Can we also maybe get a process, because if it's accurate, which I'm not questioning you, I'm just not sure, this is all new information to us too, that there's a potential violation of the easement, of the settlement. Since that's not really something the city, and that's an agreement between ODFW and the developer, could you help us figure out if the answer is the process is ODFW needs to deal with it or whatever, can we figure out what that process looks like if there is a violation so that we can provide an avenue for them? Because it's quite likely not us. I mean, if there is a violation of an agreement between ODFW and the developer, that's not our, we don't have any enforcement over that. We don't have any agency over that. But maybe we can help them figure out what the process would be or what the venue would be to get some answers if it's not us. Yeah.
Okay.
Question for Joe or Brian. In the, I understand and agree, we are not a party to the ODF&W and the Development Corporation's contract and their agreement. Are we a party in terms of, does the city or by proxy the county grant a permit for the construction of these lines?
That's what their application, what part of that was, they're being able to tap into city resources. And I know Jerry's here as well, and he doesn't want to touch it.
Jerry's not here.
Jerry's, I'm not here, man.
I mean, this is one way or another, you granted them the right to have their development. Their development has a right to tap into the sewer.
Yes.
So, it's got to go one way or the other.
Yeah, my only concern was, does the city get in a funny spot where we grant a permit to install those undergrounds in the conservancy? In which case, I just want to make sure we don't make a mistake.
Well, here's the deal. If they have a right to apply to develop, they get permission to develop in the way that they're going to develop. It would be disingenuous of the city to say then, lucky you got what you wanted, but we're not going to let you get essentially a livable or habitable, subdivision because we're not going to allow you to tap into services. So, I mean, we can't get in the way. If they can't find an easier way to do it, it's going to be more expensive for them.
Sure.
But they'll be able to get permits to open up the street and actually tap into, use the public right away. It's going to be more onerous probably for the neighborhood, but they've applied for and gotten the right to have their development.
Right. No, my concern was,
They just have to return it to the way, up to spec.
I don't see that we have an enforcement issue with the permit in terms of, it's not up to us to make sure that we don't violate their agreement.
Correct.
My concern was that we don't violate an agreement that the city has with ODF&W back to 2002, the Conservancy Agreement.
Well, no, and that's why or I should say you, voted to make sure that they don't violate it, so that we're not giving permission to violate something that is really between them and
Okay,
ODFW.
as part of our conditions of approval, we have
Uh-huh.
said you must adhere to that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And regardless, the public right-of-way is public right-of-way. It has nothing to do with the...
Right.
That's true. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
They'll get back to us.
I think
Well,
staff has,
and I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can, and maybe not, completely take over the meeting.
no, and that's, I want to kind of, I think we've got a framework for staff to kind of come together and figure out where we're at with this project, where the developer's at, and then what's the pieces there. You want to come up to the microphone there, Mr. Taylor, real quick?
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, Scott Taylor. Thank you for your clarification, but it's not clarification for us as we were talking to you.
Sure.
We're aware of these options. The real question is, your intent was then to approve if they can't get through what has been blocked as far as then your intent was that they'll tear up 34th Street to put in and change the size of those lines to accommodate this development. And we wanted to make sure that that is what you intended, because that's where we are.
Okay.
And so all the rest of it about who and what and the right-of-way, Mr. Brown has indicated you have a plan to eventually hook to things, but for our purpose, that looks a little different than what you originally heard and what you agreed to.
Okay, thank you. That helps. Thank you, sir.
Well, and I guess I'm sorry, capitalism assumes that somebody will do the least expensive route. If they can't do that, but they are still going to make money doing it, then they will go the next least expensive route.
Sure. What I'm understanding Mr. Taylor to say is, if that's the route that they go, that it's all done proper sizing and everything, it's what needs to be put into the ground. Is that what am I understanding that correct, Scott?
If that's what you agreed to.
If that was our intent,
My
that,
earlier comment in my testimony was, I don't think I should have to pay for that.
got you. Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
And we need an engineer to tell us what size it needs to be. It's not for us to try to figure that out.
That, yeah. You might be able to do that. I am not. Yes, sir. Real quick.
Real quick, I think you might be missing my intent.
Okay.
My intent is that you put a condition of approval on that subdivision.
Yes, we did, which is that,
And that's it, not disputable.
right.
If that condition can't be met, then it's not approved.
That's how I would interpret this as well.
And it's not a 2 out of 3 deal. It's 1 out of 46.
Sure.
And so if 1 out of those 46 conditions can't be met, then that subdivision can't be approved.
That's how I understand it.
That's how I understand it.
So then it's up to the developer then to come back and go through the reapplication process with,
Go through the application
Right.
process and hopefully make some significant corrections.
that's how I understood where we're at. And that's kind of the domino effect of each of your gentlemen's presentations was building off of yours in terms of, here's the thing. Scott's was if they're going to do it, then they got to go back through the process, reapply, make the changes, and then finally was, hey, we went through this huge process of the Greenway, protecting that area, and et cetera, so that needs to be memorialized and make sure that that's front and center in how we do that. Is that
Yeah, that's correct.
perfect? So I'll go back to staff and as that comes up from the developer, it'll go through its proper channels, which is the planning department, planning commission, or, back in this arena. Is that a fair assessment, Joe and Scott and Brian?
If you're saying if they reapply?
Wherever this is in the process, we need an update.
Okay, fair enough.
Does that sound fair?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Could we be included?
You bet.
Thank you very much.
I will make sure that that happens. Great, thank you. All right, moving on with community announcements. Mr. Perez.
He's back.
Yes, I'm Greg Perez. I live at 121 Northwest 12th Avenue, Canby. I just want to let everybody know that we're going to have our November 11th Veterans Day celebration over at the Vietnam Memorial Park. That will take place right around 11:15. I can't confirm the time yet because I'm working with the state, and the state's working with DC on flight pattern and flight times for flyover. So I've been doing this for like 6 months now, so it's going to be, and I'll give you guys more information as soon as I get it, and it should be Friday. Okay?
Before you leave, Greg.
Yes.
I want you to know that I'm sure everyone will have something to say, but I appreciate everything that you do for the city, and I appreciate your friendship that we've been able to build over the last couple of years. Your name deserves to be on that plaque. You give time, you give energy. We have a stretch of sidewalk in front of the fairgrounds because that was something that you championed, you drove home, and you ensured got done.
Sorry, Jerry.
So he may have poured the concrete and physically put it in, but that was something that
we needed it.
We needed it, and that's one of the reasons why your name is on there. So
One of many.
I appreciate you. I love you tremendously. You have a great family. You are truly what makes that fabric of Canby. So thank you for all that you have done, and I know you will continue to do because that's who you are.
And thank each and every one of you, because you all contribute. Each and every one of you do. And then, of course, I had many talks with the city administrator throughout this ordeal of doing these things, so I got educated, and I had another education with the police department yesterday, so that's a good one. It's a good one. So
Good.
we'll talk later. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg.
Finally, Mr. Ken Buckles about the Remembering America's Heroes.
Don't start that clock. I'm getting hip replacement on November 12th.
And I know you're excited about it.
My name is Ken Buckles, live in 1320 Southeast 7th in Canby. I'm a retired high school teacher and coach. I have a nonprofit called Remembering America's Heroes, where I've been taking veterans to high schools for the last 24 years. And in the process of all that, it's a well-known fact that Vietnam vets, the majority of them, were treated horribly when they came back home. What did it for me was I've always felt it's not right to say welcome home to them because I know they invented it, and they say welcome home to each other. And I've heard from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan vets, they don't like thank you for your service, because I hear it all the time. They say, we feel like some people are in a hurry, and they say it because they're supposed to. So my approach is I see them and I ask what their branch is and I want to talk. Well, this guy had an accent, and this was the end of June. And I said, excuse me, but you're a Vietnam vet? You're not from the United States. He says, no, I'm from New Zealand. We had troops in Vietnam, and so did the Aussies. We had your Yanks back. And I didn't even know that. So we had a great conversation. And at the end I said, you probably weren't treated how our guys were. And he said, some colorful language, yes we were. And I was spit on when I landed, and all my buddies were in New Zealand, and so were the Aussies. But then he got tears in his eyes, and he said in 2008, New Zealand had a National Vietnam Veteran Apology Day. He said it was unbelievable, emotional, healing, thousands of people. And I just said, wow, wouldn't that be something to start something like this in the United States? Because we've never done it. We've swept it under the carpet. And Vietnam vets are responsible for never again, the saying never again. They started greeting Desert Storm vets at the airports. They started greeting Iraq and Afghanistan vets. So veterans are up here now thanks to what Vietnam vets have gone through and accomplished. Well, anyway, when I said that, he immediately started laughing and said, you Yanks are too self-centered, you'll never pull it off. And I said, right when he was done, I said, you know, you could be right, but I live in a town called Canby, Oregon. I think they will jump all over this. So I met with some people that own some businesses in here, from Frank Cutsworth to Ken at Backstop, and talked to the chief of the fire department back there, Mr. Davis, chief of police, met with the mayor, and everyone, everywhere we've gone said we're in. So what we've been doing is we got t-shirts from T-Line for a very great price, and says Dear Vietnam Veterans, and with their service flag that you see on bumper stickers and everything, and it says, I'm so sorry for how you were treated when you came back home. We were selling these t-shirts to $10 to the businesses. We come and take a picture of them. We put it on with our banner and apology banner, and we post it on Canby Now and Canby Now 2. 22 businesses have done this. They've agreed to wear their t-shirts on November 11th and send employees, and trying to get people to come to Greg Perez's memorial on Veterans Day. Your mayor's already in. We have a picture of him. There's proof. It's on Facebook. My goal is I'm hoping that you're in, and there's a proclamation saying that is a Canby's Vietnam Veteran Apology Day. I hope you do this. You need to know there's other communities around this country that are chomping at the bits to do this. I grew up in Milwaukee, went to Milwaukee, taught at Milwaukee, and I have alumni furious with me that I didn't start it at Milwaukee. I tried, but they dragged their feet, and that's the difference between Milwaukee and Canby, is Canby's all on board. We stopped recruiting businesses because we just got overwhelmed, and but we've had a couple that have reached out to us. So that's the goal, and I know I'm going over, but I'll do it real quickly. I want to tell you, I could tell you 30 minutes of what has happened since we've done this, but I want to give you two very powerful examples. We were at the last slice of summer with a canopy tent, and my wife was panicking and calling me over, and a gentleman who looked to be in his mid-70s was bawling, and I went up and started talking to him, and he said, I've never told anyone I'm a Vietnam vet. My children, my grandchildren don't know, only my wife knows. And I've buried it and never dealt with it. And he said, I saw this sign and it just broke me down. He said, you see, my grandpa was a World War I, World War II career military veteran. My dad was a World War II Korea military veteran. I was expected and proud to, in 1963, you do what Dad did and Grandpa did. I joined the Army, and then I got sent to Vietnam, and in our mind, we're fighting the dreaded evil communism, the domino theory. We had no idea what this was going to turn into. I came back home, landed in New Orleans, and I was spit on. He said, I crawled into a bottle for over 2 years. It destroyed me for years. He says, and then he just was hugging us saying, thank you so much, God bless you. The other one, which is shocking, was a 9-year-old boy, could not wrap his head around this. He said, but I don't believe this. Veterans, America likes veterans now. And I am, as a teacher, I'm trying to explain and break it down, and he couldn't understand it. So really, if you're a baby boomer, you know this thing happened and it's true. Baby boomers, civilians, that's the goal, is to get baby boomer civilians like me to jump on board this cause. Anyway, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate
Mr. Buckles, you were coaching and teaching in Milwaukee when I was there, so this alum is happy you're doing it here.
Oh, yeah. I told them it'll be after the first of the year. We also have one of those t-shirts is going to be presented to Charlie Daniels and his band in Tennessee in the next couple of weeks. His band manager is a Vietnam vet. And I've been threatened by this little Clarksville, Tennessee, that they're going to blow Canby out of the water when Charlie Daniels gets relieved. So I said, all right, keep popping out.
Challenge accepted.
Thanks, Ken. Well, thank you all, appreciate that. Move into mayor's business. Just to let everyone know, we have 2, 3, 4, we have about 6 different committee openings or advisory board openings. If you're interested, we have an opening on our city budget committee, one on our park and rec advisory board, one on our traffic safety commission, one on our transit advisory committee, and 2 on our urban renewal agency budget committee. So if you're interested in getting involved, please go to our website and get involved in one of our committees that we have that are open. So back beginning of the month was Clackamas County Coordinating Committee. Just to give everyone just kind of a quick rundown, we had a presentation on the Burnside Bridge replacement. So there's a lot of conversation about if in the event of a Cascadia event, that the Burnside Bridge plays a major heartline role going east to west across Portland. And so they're looking at how design-wise and then the cost to replace and retrofit that bridge to be able to withstand an earthquake like that. So they're figuring it's right around $1 billion to replace that bridge and get it up to standard. So we had that presentation. We also went through and discussed the strategic investment fund guidelines from the vehicle registration fee. So there'll be tweaks to that. I'll bring more back when that's complete. And then we also will be seeing at our next meeting probably a review of some of the projects that would get funded right off of the get-go. And so I'm lobbying very hard for our South Ivy project to be one of the first ones to get funding. So I'll keep everyone posted on that. Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation. We had an update from the Autonomous Vehicle Task Force. Didn't know that we had such a task force in Portland, but they're working on autonomous vehicles. We also expressed our displeasure in not being involved a lot in the congestion pricing conversation as the Area Commission on Transportation. So that will see a change, and we'll start to be more involved in what that process is going to look like for the Portland metro area. And then we also did our discrimination, harassment, and sexual harassment training, which just brought up with Melissa that we might be looking at having to do our yearly training here if we haven't done so. So stay tuned for that. Park Advisory Board meeting on Tuesday night. We had a great conversation with the Capper Board, and then we also went through some 3 to 5 year kind of planning in terms of parks and some hopes and dreams and desires that they have and want to accomplish. So I'll report back more on that as that gets fine-tuned. Finally, I had a conversation, a meeting with the Molalla State Park Ranger and then the Regional State Park Supervisor discussing Molalla State Park and their plans for upgrading master planning. And it seems like their main goal is about preservation and restoration. So there isn't going to be a lot spent in terms of Molalla State Park. And so a lot of the conversation was updating, improving current facilities that may be there at the park and adding potential campgrounds and or campsites would be about the only real expansion piece. They are open to working with Canby on trail development through and around Molalla State Park and how it ties into the Emerald Necklace for us here as a city. So I was pretty encouraged with their conversation. At least we know what they're working on and how they're willing to partner with us. So, yes.
Any hope that they'll work on the boat ramp?
Yes, we did have that conversation, and they're more than willing to turn over the boat ramp to us if we want to tackle what they have tongue-in-cheek referred to as a potential brownfield. So I will just leave it at that for now. So,
thank you.
Yes. There was a whole lot of conversation about turning over or a lot that could be done with that is occurring within the state where the state is turning over state parks to other jurisdictions. And so that did come up in conversation and we quickly moved on. But it is a conversation that could be had. So that's all that I have for right now. I will move into council comments, liaison reports. Councilor Berge.
So there was no planning committee last week, so nothing for me.
Okay. Councilor Parker.
Mine can wait till next meeting.
All right. Councilor Hensley.
Likewise, no report this time.
Okay. Council President Dale.
Nothing that can't wait, sir.
All right. Councilor Farwig.
Ditto.
You were in Disney.
Councilor Spoon.
I'll take everyone else's time. No, just joking. Just a couple of community announcements that for this month and next month to give people as much time as possible. Number one, the Bridging Cultures Thanksgiving dinner is November 23rd next month, so put it on your calendars. Everyone in the community is invited. It's free. It's a combination of traditional American Thanksgiving food and some fantastic fantastic Mexican food. That's at 5 p.m. at Baker Prairie on November 23rd. On Halloween is Canby's Downtown Spooktacular. That's from 3 to 6. So parade, candy at many businesses, and it's just a fantastic time. Come down. Even last year I didn't even have my kids on Thanksgiving or on Halloween, and I still hung out downtown just to watch all of the festivities. CTV5 is organizing November 14th in the Teen Room from 6 to 7:30, kind of a introduction to videography and lighting. So in an effort to recruit more people to come to CTV5, it'll give them an opportunity to see what they can do, talk about some of the equipment, and get an idea of how they could use it in the future. First Thursday is November 7th this year, or this next month, and if I understand correctly, they're working on a scavenger hunt, so that should be fully announced sometime next week. But first Thursday on November 7th. And finally, I just want to give a big shout out to Shannon Ali at Hot Rod DreamWorks, because the scarecrows are starting to go up downtown. So if you haven't been downtown to see them, come. I think that they're intended to all be up by next Monday, and then voting will be available at the Hot Rod DreamWorks website, but some pretty fantastic ones are going up. It only took 1 year for people to get as competitive as humanly possible. So last year everyone was friendly and making a scarecrow, and this year it's like some Hollywood effects out there. So it's pretty neat, and I think she said they had something like 34 or 36 entries this year. So if you get a chance to come down this weekend, great, but they should all be up by next Monday. So come and enjoy them and spend some time and money at local businesses while you're doing that.
Great. Anything else?
I think that's enough.
Perfect. I'll take a motion for the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the minutes of the October 2nd, 2019 City Council regular meeting and approve the new limited on-premises liquor license application for Canby Pioneer Chapel.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Council Hensley to approve the consent agenda, which include the adoption of the minutes of the October 2nd, 2019 City Council regular meeting and approval of the new limited on-premises liquor license application for Canby Pioneer Chapel. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 6-0. All right, we'll move into this evening's public hearing. So we have a public hearing on for an appeal for City File number APP 19-01 of the Planning Commission decision for application DR 19-01/CUP 19-01 and VAR 19-02 AT&T Wireless Communication Facility Stealth Monopole Tower. So I'll read the process and procedure for tonight. The matter presently before the City Council is an appeal of a matter heard previously by the City Planning Commission. The record of this hearing was created before the Planning Commission. New evidence that would have to be considered by the Planning Commission will not be considered tonight. The council will hear oral arguments or review written arguments by the applicant, appellant, their agents, or others who have previously presented testimony to the commission. The applicant or appellant is the original party appearing before the Planning Commission and the party appealing the matter before the City Council. Failure to raise an issue at this hearing accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude an appeal to LUBA based on that issue. You will be limited by the time for your argument. The applicant will have a total of 10 minutes to speak. The applicant or appellant may use all that time in their initial presentation or reserve a portion for rebuttal. After applicant or appellant's argument, others that wish to present arguments will have 3 minutes each, followed by any rebuttal the applicant or appellant has reserved for closing. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out a yellow public testimony card, saying here, located in the back there. Those people other than the applicant or appellant that are interested in presenting oral or written argument, please indicate your desire to speak or submit written argument by raising your hands at this time. Okay. Conflicts of interest. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest, please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from hearing this present matter. Councilor Berge?
No conflict, and I will, whatever you call it.
Participate.
Yes.
Excellent. Counselor Parker?
Just disclosure that I am an AT&T customer, but I will participate.
Okay. Counselor Hensley?
No conflict, will participate.
Council President Dale?
No conflict, will participate.
Great. Counselor Farley?
No conflict, will participate.
And Counselor Spoon?
I have no conflict and I'll also participate.
Great. I also have no conflict of interest and will participate. Ex parte contact, also if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and substance of such contact at this time. Counselor Berge?
No contact.
Okay. Counselor Parker?
None.
Counselor Hensley?
No contact.
Council President Dale?
None.
Counselor Farley?
None.
And Counselor Spoon?
I drive by the site daily, so I've been there, but also I had a couple of citizens that are AT&T customers contact me to tell me that they had weak service, but that's about it, the extent.
Okay. I have had no ex parte contact, but I have driven by this site a couple of times. Does any member of the audience have any questions for any counselor or the mayor regarding ex parte contact or conflicts of interest? The public hearing will be conducted as follows. We will have the staff report, and then that'll be followed by questions, if any, by the hearing body or staff. I will then open the public hearing for testimony, the applicants or appellant's argument. Proponents of the appeal will not have more than 3 minutes. Opponents of the appeal will not have more than 3 minutes, and then the applicant's rebuttal. I will then close the public hearing. Questions or any additional questions, if any, by the hearing body, and then discussion by the hearing body. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure of the hearing? Seeing none? Great. Mr. Potter, good evening.
Good evening.
How are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
Great.
All right, so the item in front of you, as the mayor said, is an appeal of a planning commission decision for an AT&T wireless telecommunications facility. New Singular Wireless is the applicant, and this project involved 3 applications that were submitted and reviewed concurrently. This includes a site and design review application, a conditional use permit that's required based on the type of facility and the zone that it's in or proposed to be in, and then a major variance, because even though a conditional use permit would allow a 130-foot tall tower, it also requires a 1-to-1 setback for that height. So if it's 130 feet tall, then it requires 130 feet setback. So to achieve that, the applicant would need a major variance. So these 3 applications were reviewed and decided on by the Planning Commission together. So this is just a location of map of where it's proposed. It's on the west side of town, relatively close to 99E, near McDonald's and the high school. And this is just a brief timeline of the application process. So the applications were received in early July. A staff report was prepared for the Planning Commission, and this staff report recommended approval based on the criteria that it's in the Canby Municipal Code. And then 14 conditions of approval were attached to that recommendation for approval. There were 2 Planning Commission hearings, one at the end of August, where there was an oral decision to deny the project, and then new findings were prepared consistent with that oral decision, and then it went to a second Planning Commission hearing where the Planning Commission affirmed their decision and adopted their own findings. So the next day, on September 10th, we sent out a notice of decision to the applicant and interested parties. That started a 10-day window for the applicant to appeal. They appealed on September 20th, and then here we are today at the City Council hearing. Since the Planning Commission heard this set of applications, The applicant has provided a long narrative that was in your packet describing their rebuttal to their denial. That included a new site plan that shows some of the dimensions that they were looking to see based on their concerns for the height and the distance to surrounding land uses and facilities. In addition to that, we received 2 additional comment letters from the public. We had 4 comment letters during the initial process. And then, so we received one that was in your packet, and then the second one we just received recently, and that was put in front of you this evening. And so I should also mention here that the appeal is requesting for your body to approve overturn the decision of the Planning Commission and approve the project as originally submitted. They're not currently proposing any changes to the project. So your options tonight are to reject the appeal and confirm the Planning Commission's decision, 2, to overturn their decision and approve the project, or 3, to remand the decision back to the Planning Commission. And that's the end of my presentation, but I also will mention that I have the original presentation with graphics and exhibits that were presented to the Planning Commission if you'd like to see anything.
Well, and just so the record's clear on this matter, you're presenting the entirety of the Planning Commission hearing for the purposes of making it part of the record for this hearing?
Well, would you like me to?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that you can consider all of the evidence that was presented at the Planning Commission hearing. And that can be part of an argument for any subsequent appeal.
Okay. So, so this is the beginning of the presentation that was presented to the Planning Commission. So the staff report was based on the criteria that are in the code, and so that's what's listed here. And like I described before, there's 3 applications that were related. All of these would be required to construct the planned cell tower. Existing conditions, it's on Southwest 2nd Avenue. As I said before, it's on a site that's zoned for heavy industrial or heavy manufacturing. It's right near Canby High School. Right near it are a mix of commercial and institutional uses. And the site is 0.81 acres. That's the location. And so the project is a 130-foot stealth monopole telecommunications facility with antennas. So 124 feet of that is the structure itself, and then it will be designed to look like a fir tree. So there'll be faux branches that will extend 6 feet beyond the structural height for a total height of 130 feet. It's designed to provide wireless telephone and data service. The applicant has identified in their materials that there's a deficiency of service, and they can probably describe that in more detail than I can. But there's a deficiency in service, and they're looking to augment the existing service for AT&T customers in this area. And they had a targeted area where only in this targeted area would it provide the additional service that they're looking to provide. And at the foot of it would be a 25 by 30 lease area. And so everything that's existing on the Pacific Pride site right now would operate as it is currently. This is a rendering of the proposed facility. The leasing area is at the bottom, where there would be a screened fence that screens the equipment, and then there would be a small landscape buffer in the front of it, buffering it visually from 2nd Avenue, which is the only side where you will see it from the public view. And then, so the applicant in their materials has provided a series of renderings. You can see that when you're right in front of it, it's very prominent. And as you move down 2nd Avenue, it is obscured a little more by existing trees and other parts of the built environment. These are some more views. And then these last ones are the ones sort of as you're leaving or coming into town on 99E. So this is what you would look, 6 on the right is as you're coming into town. And the upper pictures are the current existing conditions and then with the facility. And you can see it above McDonald's. It is pretty tall compared to the other things around it. This is the applicant's target area, so this kind of shows where they were looking to site the facility. And this is a map that they will probably like to talk a little bit about how this shows their deficiencies in service and how they would like to fill in the gaps that are currently existing for their customers. So when staff reviewed this project, we reviewed it with looking at all the criteria that's in the code, and that includes the variance criteria specifically for siting and reviewing telecommunications facilities, and then conditional uses have their own set of criteria. And these are also detailed in the staff report. Basically, the staff report went one by one through all the criteria and found that to the extent feasible, the project would comply with the criteria. And you will see under siting of wireless telecommunications facilities, it complies except for it needs a variance. This is the original diagram before the additional dimensions were added, and so the dense bit of line work is showing where the facility would be, and then that radius shows the radius of the height in the unlikely event that it would collapse. That is the radius of the facility. And within that, you can see that there's the existing pumps at the gas station are below that. And so staff identified 14 conditions of approval along with the recommendation of approval. These included conditions that required it to look convincingly like a fir tree. This includes painting it and having faux branches that are spaced and designed to look like an actual fir tree so that it blends in with the existing environment. And then based on the pre-app conference held with the applicant and staff comments, they have proposed that it have breakpoint technology. So in the unlikely event that a huge storm or an earthquake would happen and there was something that caused it to collapse, it would collapse in on itself rather than the full height of the facility falling. And so this is basically, it's designed so the lower portion is structurally stronger than the upper part, and so it'll just collapse in on itself. And this is a condition that many cities put on these types of facilities. And then another important one that we've highlighted here is that we've required a maintenance agreement to be established so that the facility and the leasing area underneath it are maintained. Like I mentioned before, there were 4 original comments received prior to the Planning Commission decision. One was from the city engineer saying that he had no comments. One was from ODOT also saying no comments. And then 2 were from residents, one identifying concerns regarding health effects of 5G technology. And I will note that this particular facility is not planned to have 5G technology. It's for the existing cell technology. And then lastly, a letter concerning the visual impacts of the cell tower. And based on the criteria in the code, staff made a recommendation to Planning Commission to approve the applications.
questions for Mr. Potter?
No, excellent presentation.
I guess my one question, Ryan, is the maintenance agreement. Can you elaborate on some of the details on, like, what does that entail?
The condition of approval itself doesn't set out performance measures for that. It just establishes that one would have to be agreed upon between the property owner and the entity leasing it for the cell tower.
So based on, thanks. So the reason it was turned down were for 4 items. Can you elaborate on those 4 for us so that maybe we can get into those one by one? Because it seems to me, at least explaining what those pieces are.
Yes, so the main set of concerns the Planning Commission had were health effects associated with the type of technology that's used in a cell phone tower. So one of the letters they received talked about concerns that there's cancer clusters or other health effects of people that reside or work near cell towers. And so they were concerned that it is close to the high school, and maybe that would be putting a lot of people in close proximity to the facility. I should mention that there is federal telecommunications law that we did identify in the staff report that sort of preempts local jurisdictions from denying telecommunications facilities such as this purely based on the health effects if the applicant has complied with the FCC's regulations for the amount of radio waves that will be emitted from the facility. And so in their original application materials, they included a study by a registered engineer demonstrating that it would not exceed the FCC regulations. I think the Planning Commission still, there was some split opinion on whether that was convincing enough. And the other item that they had concerns with was the close proximity to the gas pumps that are directly on the site currently. And the additional dimensions that the applicant showed on the updated site plan were meant to clarify if the facility fell as it's intended and engineered to break at a midpoint, it would break before it would hit the gas pumps that are there now. So one of the gas pumps is 88 feet away, and one is 68 feet away. And so I think the applicant team can talk more about how exactly they intend to engineer it. But if it was at the midpoint, it would, based on my calculations, the structural height would not hit it. Maybe the 6 feet of branches at the top might graze the gas pump cover in the unlikely event that it would collapse, which I don't think there's necessarily any evidence showing that that's likely.
You said there are 4 points, that's 2.
There's 3.
Okay.
So, and all 3 findings that were based on the oral statements from the Planning Commission revolved around approving the variance. So, one talked about the health effects, and then the other 2 talked about safety issues and whether or not hypothetically a different site could be available that could accommodate this facility. And in the original staff report, we did analyze that and look at the other parcels in this area. And while there are parcels that have the same zoning, most, if not all, would have similar setback issues. If the facility is 130 feet tall, in most cases, it would fall across some property line and would not be able to accommodate the full one-to-one setback. And based on the criteria, it talks about sort of fairness with other parcels with similar situations. And if you look at our industrial park, there are larger parcels that have the same zoning, but they're not in the target area where the applicant is looking to augment their service. So staff's opinion is that they can't really be judged based on, they couldn't put this facility in the industrial park. It wouldn't meet the need that they're looking to meet in the western side of Canby.
Okay. Was there other locations besides in the industrial park?
No, but I don't believe so, because I think the CM zoning is just clustered along 99E on the western part of the city, and then over in the industrial park and adjacent to the industrial park.
Any other questions for Ryan before?
No, not for now.
Can we ask a question based on the minutes? Is that permissible?
We might be able to come back to that after the,
Well, it would be a question for him about distance.
yeah, if you got a distance
I
question.
can refer to the minutes of the planning commission meeting in my question.
Certainly.
Okay. In the minutes, there were a couple of commissioners that were concerned about the fall height and the distance from the pumps, and it's cited twice in the minutes that the pumps are only 50 feet, where the numbers you gave were 68 and 88, so I'm just wondering where that difference came from.
Right, we didn't have a detailed diagram with dimensions in front of us during the planning commission meeting, so that was a guess.
Okay, thank you.
And so the intent of their new exhibit was to show exactly what the distances would be.
Okay, thank you for that.
Question. Good. Okay. Any other questions?
And in the planning commission meetings, I'm trying to go back through and find it. I swear I read that across 99 at the truck sales was another location that was available.
Yes, and I think the applicant would probably like to speak to their search activities, because they might have changed since the planning commission hearing. But I know that they did look and talk to other property owners in the area. And so their search was not only limited by the target area where they're trying to add service, but also who is a willing property owner that's willing to lease part of their land.
Great. Ryan, thank you. Appreciate this report. I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing now for testimony. So we'll hear from the applicant for 10 whole minutes. Good evening, how are you?
Good evening. I do apologize, this is just water and fancy
totally
water.
fine.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I'm Sarah Springer. I work for Wireless Policy Group and Bush Law Firm, and I'm here representing AT&T this evening. I'd also like to acknowledge other colleagues of mine from SmartLink who have been shepherding and involved in this application from the outset, and they're here to offer additional information as expert resources as necessary.
Great.
Just a point of clarification, do I need to reserve time from this 10 minutes for rebuttal, or is there additional time for rebuttal? I apologize, I missed that.
We'll reserve a couple of minutes at the end.
Perfect, great. First and foremost, I'd like to just set the stage that we're not viewing this as a contentious appeal. As Ryan greatly and expertly presented, this project was originally recommended for approval by staff, and we think that we're here this evening just because of a missed opportunity to have a greater amount of discourse and exchange of information with the Planning Commission during their review of the application, to no fault of anybody. But I think it it suffered from that lack of questions and back and forth. And so the goal here this evening is for us to have a conversation with all of you to make sure that you feel comfortable that we're addressing all of the questions and concerns that the Planning Commission had, and then any additional questions or concerns that you might have regarding the application. So with that, I understand we'll have questions at the end. If you have questions while I'm presenting, please feel free to interject as well. That's completely fine. As Ryan indicated, and as you asked, Mr. Mayor, there were three bases of the Planning Commission's decision. The first being basically alternative sites, second being the setback requirements and the reduction of setback distances, and then the third, that environmental consideration. The first actually will go, which you last just discussed quickly. I did hand out to the beginning, and I apologize to Ryan, I didn't present this to him earlier than this hearing, but within the past, since the decision of the Planning Commission, we have continued to look at alternative sites that planning commissioners raised during their discussion, and specifically to the trucking site across 99. Originally, before the application was submitted, we reached out to those property owners, received no response back, which is common. So of course, then we don't proceed with looking at that site as an option. Based upon the Planning Commission's discussion at their meeting, we went ahead and continued outreach to that property owner just to exhaust that option. In the course of that additional outreach, we were able to reach the property owner's son. And with persistence, we've kept in contact with them, identified a couple of sites on their property that might be options, but then didn't get full responses back from the property owner if they'd like to proceed with those sites. And just a matter of a few days ago, our team did reach those property owners, and they indicated that they were no longer interested in pursuing a wireless facility on their property. So unchanged but confirmed, if you will, that those sites were unavailable for this facility. The second matter with the setbacks and with the concerns of safety with the reduced setbacks for the facility and the variance request. First and foremost, big picture, as Ryan indicated, within the targeted search area that is necessary for this facility, there are no properties available that would meet the setback requirements. So anywhere that we would place this facility within the targeted search area would require a setback of some sort from property lines. In this instance, the setbacks we were looking for from two property lines along 2nd Avenue and then the neighboring property. The main safety concern, as noted, of the fueling facility is on the same property. So the request for the setback variance won't affect the safety concerns for the fueling station that's on the same property. And I also apologize if there's confusion within the appeal document. As you see from the site plan that was up previously, even without the breakpoint technology, the oil tanks that are on the northwest side of the site are outside of even the 130-foot fall zone for the facility. So really, we're just talking about those fuel facilities on the same property. To Ryan's point, and to speak a little bit, I'm not an engineer, but in general for breakpoint technology, it doesn't necessarily have to be at the midpoint of the tower. It can be at 80 feet, at 90 feet. So if it's a 130-foot tower, monopole, if they want to put the breakpoint technology at 80 feet, that means the top 50 feet would then cave on itself. If you did 90 feet, it'd be the top 40 feet, etc. So there's, it can be engineered in myriad ways, depending upon what the fall zone radius is and the needs of that are for the facility. Obviously, as you can see from our revised site plan, a midpoint break of 65 feet or so would suffice to avoid falling on any of those current uses on the property. To the point of the surety with the breakpoint technology, that is designed by the pole manufacturer into the manufacturing of the pole. And so the structural analysis that would come with the building permit would be stamped from an engineer and approved design to guarantee that technology and that functionality built in and engineered into the pole. The final issue of the environmental concerns, Ryan is exactly right that unfortunately, or good, bad, or indifferent, federal law completely preempts jurisdictions from making decisions on an application based upon health or environmental concerns if the applicant shows that they fall within the FCC's RF emissions standards for a given facility. We've done that within our original application, and we're well below, far below what the FCC EF emissions standard would be for such a facility. So for the purposes of on-paper consideration of this application, the jurisdiction is preempted from making a decision on the application based upon that. I realize that's a bitter pill to take, if you will, and we noted to it in the appeal documents, but I also wanted to let you know that we understand general community concerns in general, and wanting to be better educated and to have more information about wireless technology, how it works, how these facilities works, and we are more than happy to and would very much like to present additional educational materials and information from neutral sources, if you will, outside of this proceeding. So we purposely did not provide those additional documents because they would not be proper to enter into the record for this proceeding. But we want to be very clear that we're not trying to stop the conversation on that. We're very happy to, again, circle back with staff and provide information and educational materials that are desired by staff and council and the community so that people can feel assured that they have thorough information and feel that they fully understand how one of these facilities operates. With that, I will say that procedurally, I just wanted to make sure that it's clear on the record that the underlying application was also part of the record, as well as the staff report and considerations that.
And that was in the packet as well,
Perfect.
I believe.
Yeah, perfect. So I'll reserve that then for the rest of the time for any rebuttal at the end, and then any additional questions as well. We're more than happy to answer and respond to.
Any questions for the applicant at all?
I do have one, and I'm just curious if you have any idea how often, I know it continued to be referred to as an unlikely event, which I would probably agree with because I've never ever heard of a tower collapsing. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me how often it does happen?
I do not have that information. What I can tell you is that it is an unlikely event, and what I can tell you is just like there are building code standards for structures and buildings, there are building code standards that are baked into the IBC, the International Building Code that the city has adopted in the state, that govern the engineering standards for towers. So it's the ANSI standards, the ANSI, and they look into, they consider the engineering required for a tower based upon where it is. Obviously, it's going to be different if you're in the city inland, or if you're on a mountaintop by the coast. And they look at other environmental patterns within the placement to determine the structural integrity that's required for that structure. There are different classifications of the poles. This would be a Class 2 pole, or design, I should say, which is a rigorous design that is intended so that it does not collapse. And again, just like analogous to building a house, if you build a house to code, you would think that that house would not fall in on itself. Same thing with this tower. That said, if a hurricane comes along, it might take a house's roof off. But that could be if a hurricane comes along here, right? Because we don't have hurricanes here. Obviously, building code standards are different in different areas based upon the weather and conditions there. Same with the standards for the towers. I can tell you anecdotally, and talking to the manufacturer of the monopine and talking about the breakpoint technology, that not only do they not have firsthand experience of monopoles failing on their own or failing in general, but for the breakpoint technology, that's rarely used as well here because we don't have the weather instances that you might have, say, in the southeast with hurricanes, tornadoes, things of that sort. So the breakpoint technology is even an added extra in this area of the country that is not typically utilized. But again, as Ryan mentioned, we're happy to incorporate that into the tower design to assuage any additional concerns about fall zone radius.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
And just to add to that, part of the record from the Planning Commission, I know there was anecdotal evidence that said the engineer that was talking about it had claimed that he had never seen one break, and he only saw one bend once in a hurricane. So that was part of the record below. So I thought I would bring that up to flesh out the answer to your question.
Any other questions?
So as I'm looking through the drawings and stuff, one thing I do not see anywhere in here is a geotechnical report. Was there one done to let us know what the soils are?
There was not one done, and I do not believe one is required for this construction. And I actually will defer to staff. I don't believe, will it be part of the building permit? I don't think so. No.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. All right. 1 second, miss. So, great. Thank you very much. If you wish to address us on the issue, if on the back counter there are these yellow cards to fill out. Okay. If you want to fill that out and bring it to the city recorder right now, then I can definitely give you a moment. So next is any, so proponents of the appeal, so those that are for the appeal, Joe, for the appeal to be reversed.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, proponents basically of the application going through.
Right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, that's where
This
it
is
gets all
where
wonky.
A negative is a positive and a
Yeah.
positive is a negative.
Voting no means yes,
is
and yes
no, and
means
no is
no.
yes. Okay, so, all right.
You could just say for the cell tower.
For the cell tower, okay. And then, so seeing none, any opponents to the cell tower? Ms., is that what you're filling out as?
I'm against it.
Okay, so finish filling out the card and then bring it on up. We'll give you 3 minutes to let us know your thoughts.
Okay. Now?
Yeah. Just hand it there to Melissa, as our city recorder. To Melissa, please. Yeah,
Should I
thank
sit
you.
here?
Yep, sit right here at the table and
Okay.
go ahead and enter it. And then,
I'm
yeah.
Virginia Weller. I live at 140 Northwest 12th Avenue in Canby. I've never been to one of these meetings before.
That's okay.
I've lived in Canby about 20 years, and I'm a homeowner. It's just, I know, I think I'm emotional about this a little bit, but I just think it's very unattractive. And Canby's really been into making itself more beautiful and, homey and inviting. And I'm just, somebody out there in the community that really doesn't have any clout, but just giving my opinion, that I think it's really ugly. I talked to a man outside that had already been in here earlier about the neighborhood, and he said that he used to build, or, I don't know, had something to do with cell tower construction. And he said he thought the ones that were all decorated like trees were completely even more gross than the regular ones, because he used to do it all the time. They don't look real, they don't look natural, and this one is going to stick out like a sore thumb, as you could see in the pictures that you had. It's going to stick out like a sore thumb, like so obtrusively, and it doesn't, if it was with other trees, like I saw pictures online, I looked this stuff up online, and there's some that don't look as bad because they're like in a kind of a forested area and they're not as noticeable. I just think they should continue to look harder and find a placement that's not visible from 99E. And, you know, it might take them longer to find it, but I think Canby, the beauty of Canby and the effects on Canby are more important. And I think the Planning Commission's decision should be honored. And I think, if anything, this should be denied, or else it should be sent back to the Planning Committee. That's all I have to say, and I've never done this before, so.
You did
But I
great.
live on Northwest 12th, so I live across the street from Greg and Cindy.
Terrific. Thank
Or
you for coming.
Christy, I mean.
Yes, you did great.
You did
Okay,
good, thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, any other points, did you want to address the design piece?
Thank you. If you don't mind, two things. Full disclosure, before doing this work, I was a city attorney for about 10 years of a community very analogous to Canby. So I appreciate the concerns of citizens, and a lot of times when legally you have to make decisions a certain way, that might not address the concerns of the citizens as well. So I want to make sure we're addressing both the legal concerns, but then also those of your constituents. On the legal side, aesthetics were not a reason for the Planning Commission's denial of the facility. So just to make that clear known, and also for the public to know that the council, are not able to make a decision based on aesthetics, because that was not one of the reasons for the Planning Commission's denial of the application. That said, we understand that you can never please everybody, and it's not a real tree, and it never will be a real tree. And the design proposed is based on the code's requirement for a stealth facility. If the council were to decide you just wanted a basic monopole and not make it look like a tree, we're very happy to do that. That is always an option. But the stealth tree facility was proposed based upon city code. Ryan mentioned it earlier, but our team did work with staff after the pre-app meeting to add additional kind of design changes to the tree to try to make it look more tree-like, unless, I think at the time, somebody likened it to a Q-tip or a mascara wand, which was pretty accurate, actually, for the initial outlook. So extending the tree branches further down so there's not as much of a visible trunk showing, branching it out a little bit. You know, it's not a perfect science. It's like finding an artificial Christmas tree. Some of them look really fake, some of them look more real. But to the extent that we can make it look aesthetically so that it can please as many people as possible, that's our goal. But again, if it's determined that plain monopole is actually more desired, because it is what it is, we'd be amenable to that as well.
Thank you. All right.
Can I say one more thing? Just for 10 seconds?
Yeah, you kind of had.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. I mean,
Got
Josh,
some rules that we have.
Yeah, there's just certain
I
legal pieces.
knew.
No, it's okay. Appreciate you asking. You know, that's why I have my attorney here to my right of me here to, you know, to tell me whether or not that's appropriate or not. I tend to err towards yes, and he's there to say, no, can't do that. So, thank you though, yeah. So I'm going to close the public hearing right now. We're out of the public hearing. Any further questions or dialogue here? Questions first. Any other questions? Yes.
Kind of both a question and dialogue at the same time. Given the denial point that was about the close proximity to the gas pumps, can we consider conditioning that the break point be above a certain point or preclude any possibility of it hitting? Because I don't think that was in the original. Yeah, that wasn't originally part of it, but is that a possible condition for us?
You can approve it with your own conditions.
Okay.
Good question.
And I think, to be even more clear, a condition was breakpoint technology, so you just giving more specificity to that is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
A few questions? Sure, for Ryan. The 130-foot setback, which is really a 1-to-1 ratio, I didn't quite catch, is that a local requirement or is that a federal standard?
That's local, that's in our code.
Okay, that's a CMC requirement. CMC 1608-120 does not specifically address safety as one of the considerations, but does it need to? For we have this concept that public safety is always an overriding concern and jurisdiction of a municipal commission. So does lack of inclusion omit that as a criteria?
That's maybe a Joe question. I don't believe we have an official interpretation of what that particular piece of the code means.
Well, and I could speak to a greater, when it talks about the code and how it has to meet code, it talks about, comprehensive plan, it talks about, policies, statewide goals and such too. And safety is one of those, to be certain. So there is a greater kind of overarching idea that public safety and health is always going to be a consideration when you're doing these things.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted that confirmation. Ryan, when it comes to granting variances, in particular a major variance, is the understanding of the legal obligation is that it is a may or a must? Must the Planning Commission grant a variance? Or may they?
If it's a major variance, I mean, they're clearly asking to be outside of what the code allows outright.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's permissive, so it's not a shall, it's a may, and there are conditions set out in the application you've seen where if you're asking for a major variance, they have to hit on all those. And one of them that I think is kind of more pertinent here is whether it's an undue burden on the person the applicant, whether or not, they can't actually operate the way they're wanting to operate, given the parameters, the thing that they're trying to vary.
Okay.
And so I think that's the condition they were hanging their hat on, is that this is kind of an undue burden to try to find something around there that has 130 feet on all sides to play with.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
And one of the criteria for the major variance is it the minimum variance required, and so the closest property line to this facility is 13 and a half feet.
Mm-hmm.
Could you argue that that's a very small portion of 130 feet,
mm-hmm.
and it's a matter of scale, but it's also a matter of discretion, Is is that site or other sites like it possible in that area of having a significantly larger share of the 130 feet that it could provide?
Right, and even if we, trying to be careful how I say it, even if we were willing to agree, sure, any site in the targeted area would require some amount of variance. Does it pass in your mind or our city attorney's mind that the reasonable man test, reasonable person test, my apologies, would say that a 90% variance is a major variance?
It is a major variance, but that's what you would be approving or not approving, is the major variance.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to establish that 90% variance, that's big.
Major.
Yeah.
That's pretty major. Okay.
Well, and just to flesh that out, it is up to you whether or not that seems reasonable. In this case, you are, as a body, the reasonable person.
Right.
So you decide whether that's reasonable or not.
In our quasi-judicial role, we get to interpret.
Yeah.
And we, as you say, can set additional standards. And one quick check, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Yeah. Anything good? Councilor Berger, anything?
And a quick answer.
Microphone.
And quick, back to you, Council President Dale, is 16.53. It actually does say that it may be, right here, variance may be granted.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
Ryan, just in terms of again, the decision points, right? So approve it, deny it, or send it back to the Planning Commission. if it's remanded back to the planning commission, what caveats are we allowed to put on it, or guidelines that we put on it if we send it back for them to specifically look at and rethink their decision?
If you want to send it back, you can, just ask them to look at if you think that the record didn't answer the question, then send it back, to have them look at what you're asking for. Without speculating about what it is that you're thinking, you can send it back with the idea of, please look at this, or we don't think you looked at this. Okay.
Thank you.
And that would have to be limited to the topics already discussed, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, you can't open up.
Right.
It's not a brand new conversation. It's specifically compared to these pieces that have been, that's been appealed by the.
Well, and it should be also, legally speaking, the criteria that you're supposed to consider to begin with. So if you don't think they answered to the criteria good enough, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilor Spoon?
In the notes of the planning commission meeting, it sounded like there was an attempt to have a neighborhood meeting or have discourse conversation with neighboring properties that might be most impacted by the setbacks, and no one appeared for that meeting.
Correct.
Since then, has there been any objection from neighboring properties to?
No, the comments that we've received, none of them have identified themselves as being neighbors.
Okay.
It's just the ones that are in the packet and submitted tonight.
Right.
I just wasn't sure the relationship. And when I think of setbacks, I think people most impacted by them are the neighboring properties, so
Sure.
they would be the most likely to complain if it was an issue.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
What I'm about to say is probably going to make me a little unpopular with my friends on the planning commission, but initially I was wondering about the safety issues that they were worried about, but with the new information about the new distances and having the breakpoint technology, I think that's been addressed. As far as the health effects, we've already been told not to be considered. Aesthetics, I can appreciate that. I, for one, didn't want to vote for Fred Meyer gas station, but that wasn't our job. Given the criteria that we have, I would be for overturning their decision, but I would at least remand it. I don't think that I would be voting for upholding it. Sorry, guys.
So
Approving the project, overturning their decision, it would be what I would vote for, but at very least remanding it to them to consider certain points.
what points would you want them to consider
Well-
if it was remanded back?
Whatever points you guys decided, I would be for overturning their decision.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
But I would vote for remanding it if you had good points.
We have good points to remand it to it, got it. Thank you.
I'll address some points.
Yeah, Councilor Spoon?
Just in terms of my thoughts on it, I'm of similar mind to Councilor Hensley. We can't consider health effects. In terms of their concern about the close proximity to the gas pumps, I think that the measurements resolve a lot of that original concern. But also I would be for adding a condition that the break point ensure that they wouldn't hit the pumps. And then in terms of not enough alternate sites considered, I think it sounds like they've done the work to try. They've done the work to try and find an alternate site, but alternate sites require landowner cooperation, and it sounds like that's just not in the cards. And then related to whether or not the major variance for the setbacks and whatnot that we've kind of discussed, I understand the aesthetic issue. It's not something we can consider. My preference would be for the stealth pole than a regular pole anyway. I think that there's a net public benefit to adding the cell tower, which leans me towards allowing the variance. But I also think that, it is a less than ideal location, sure. It's within sight of anyone coming through town. But I can also think of a lot worse sites it could be. I would hate for it to be much more closely located to a retail area like our downtown, or even farther, more in the middle of 99, where you have customers coming and going that are spending a lot more time in close proximity to the pole, which I think the closer you get to the pole, the less realistic it looks. Most people driving down 99 are hardly going to take notice to it, really. So I think that as far as all of that goes, I don't see a reason to do anything other than overturn the Planning Commission. I understand their original concerns, but it sounds like they've been addressed.
Councilor Barber?
Yeah, I'm going to be kind of in that same boat, and again, like it's been stated already by Councilor Hensley and Councilor Spoon, I definitely understand the concerns, health-wise as well as aesthetics-wise, but again, those are not things that we can judge this based on. And I do think that it's a benefit to our community to have better coverage. So I would also vote to overturn it.
Okay.
We just running down the dais?
Well, I can't. I know Councilor Parker grabbed.
Oh, he's been waiting. He's been waiting.
So he usually pulls
I'll
forward.
I've had some airtime already.
I'll defer to Tim. He might forget it if we make him wait.
That means Councilor Parker's already forgotten.
He needs a moment. So, Mr. Mayor, to me, the salient points, in regards to the 4 decision points that the Planning Commission made, there was the mention in the argument and the rebuttal, and the appeal. I am not persuaded that the standard of taking advantage of existing features as it relates to setbacks is really in play here.
Okay.
I don't think there's any appeal on the basis of setback on that. My question to Ryan regarding safety and that Joe chimed in on has to do with the number 4 argument of the applicant, that there was a procedural failing by the Planning Commission. The applicant's argument that the Planning Commission did not justify not granting a variance is not persuasive to me because it is a permissive granting. Mm-hmm. They do not have to justify that on the basis of existing code. Code sets the standard for the variance. The alternative site, I will just say that I don't feel the city is obligated to accommodate the optimal desires of the applicant. And sometimes in business, we have to settle for somewhat less than optimal. So I am not persuaded that this is the one and only site, I'm not convinced that alternative sites have not been run to ground. And sometimes it takes more money, sometimes it takes more time, sometimes you don't get the full result you desire. But the hardship and inability of other sites, I'm not persuaded on. Make sense?
I'm tracking so far.
Regarding the radiation health and safety hazard there, I do believe the Planning Commission's position on that is untenable in regards to U.S. code in particular. I will say they got that wrong. I don't find that that is pivotal to their decision. It's not a singular pivot for the decision. They have not hung their whole case on that. Nor do I find a reason to remand based just on that. And, could they have done a better job? Maybe, we all could. But where I am at, I am not finding cause to remand nor cause to grant the appeal.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. That is to say, I uphold the Planning Commission's decision.
Okay. Great. Councilor Parker?
Well, this is great. I don't usually get a chance to disagree with Tim, so.
Yeah, you do, just not on this stuff.
To me, what we're looking at is what's in front of us. That it's yes or no. It's not go out and shop for another piece of property. That's not our job. That's not what we do as a quasi. That's from a quasi-judicial standpoint. We have a property in front of us, and the question is on that. The setback, I think, is reasonably addressed. I think we're going to be facing this more and more as we get increased density, and we're going to be making these decisions, and I think we should do it as we are tonight on a case-by-case basis. Does a major variance in the setback affect safety? Does it affect neighbors? And going down the criteria. I have been presented with no evidence that granting this major variance is going to have a negative effect upon Canby. So in the absence of testimony or evidence, I'm going to go with that setback. And then, of course, the FCC preemption thing. I would be delighted to have a whole conversation about this sort of thing. But again, we have a pretty limited scope in a quasi-judicial role. And rather than a remand, I would just say let's go ahead and take an action tonight, up or down.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Berger, any thoughts?
I do. I think that our planning commission, granted, they could have done some stuff a little bit differently with it. I actually agree with their standpoint. When I look at where that location is, right now, there's some safety risks. Breakpoint technology sounds great, looks great on paper. Do we know how it really works in real life? No. I also look at, as that area gets developed more, as Canby continues to grow, that's going to put a little bit of a hindrance on that property right there if that was to develop up. I know that we're not allowed to think about the health risks to it, and honestly, I'm not even thinking about the health risks. I'm thinking about the safety risks of it. The safety of that area is a lot of students walking to and from school all the time. There are other locations in this town that are more desirable as a city to place that pole. I think that kind of like Council President Dale said, that it's not our job to give them their prime real estate every single time when there are other locations. The industrial park might not be the most suitable spot for it, but it's only a small distance away, and I'm sure they're still going to get a pretty good coverage from that. So granting a major variance, I do not think it's our job to grant. If our planning commission is opposed to it, I'm going to stay with our planning commission, and I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Appreciate the dialogue. Any other thoughts or comments on that?
I'm good, sir.
No, I think we are. I think we're, okay, great. Thank you all.
Can I add one thing? In terms of it being in an optimal location, I agree it's not our job to help them find the optimal location, but I think there's something to be said for the fact that the landowner is willing to work with them and the landowner's okay with it. So as much as it's not our job to find the optimal location, like I also certainly believe in landowner rights, and if this is a project the landowner wants to happen on his or her property, then I don't really see why I should say it's not an appropriate location. In terms of, can I ask a question though about breakpoint technology?
Yes.
Someone might be able to answer. Just to address Councilor Berge's issue with it and whether or not we know what happens in the real world, I was making the assumption that breakpoint technology had been tested under a number of conditions and it had actually been forced to do its thing. Is that not an accurate assumption on my part? Just to make sure that we get that.
Let me discuss a little bit on that, and you can come up and rebuttal to that. So there are a lot of different variances for it to actually work properly. When you're talking about the ANSI that she was talking about earlier, that's a steel manufacturer's that's their specifications. And when you're talking about steel breaking at a different area, how does that steel break every single time? It's not proven, especially when you have an issue with unsuitable soils possibly underneath of it, which gives more ground to shift around underneath of it. It's not a direct science, and the technology, I'd like to hear what your engineers have done with it in testing.
Yeah. And I think, I know what you're going to say. We've closed the testimony.
Yeah. So insofar as that's new evidence, I guess the question is whether or not we reopen the public hearing to allow that testimony and whether or not you want to reopen it for the purposes of your own testimony.
And my thought was just because he made an assertion, like I guess I wanted some follow-up on it. So there was someone expert.
We do have a procedural issue here.
Yeah.
Well, and so, well, my question is the applicant asking for us to reopen?
I was just going to offer, I'm happy to just, off the record, answer your question, because the contents of my answer I already stated on the record, so
Okay.
I'm happy with procedurally not reopening it at this point.
But for the purposes then of the record, the evidence that's in is during the hearing and the hearing before, so that this might answer your question, but if you're going to make a decision on it, you have to delve back into the record and what's already there, and their original presentation or
So what I
tonight.
What I'm saying is that was originally in the planning commission notes before.
So you can rely on that evidence.
So the breakpoint technology was already discussed in the original denial, correct?
Correct, in that hearing.
Correct. And in my testimony earlier this evening, I did state, so I'll just recall back to that testimony for you to consider, that the pole design with the breakpoint technology, I noted already on the record, so you can consider this, is stamped by an engineer. So they are saying that it's going to operate the way it does. And I did say that I am not an engineer, so I can't say more than that, but what I can say is, just like with any structure, as I noted, with any home or what have you, that is built to the specifications that are adopted by the city, which this would be the ANSI standards, that it would be constructed to that. The stamp, as you know, is the engineer's livelihood, so they don't put their stamps on things lightly.
Right, so back to what I was saying, there are calculations that the engineer did. It's not like a fire test where they actually go into a laboratory and do testing and see that the real world application is gonna break in that situation, correct?
I'm not an engineer of the pole manufacturer, so I don't know what they've done, if you will, to come up with an engineered design that they can stamp.
Right.
What I do know is that they say if it's going to break at a certain point, that's where it is, and they're stamping it, that's how it's going to operate.
Right, and that's all I had said, is that the engineer says that it's going to do this, but we don't know if it's really going to do that because it's never been tested in a real world situation. That's all I was saying.
We don't know that. They might do testing. I can't confirm or deny that they do, yeah. One other point that I wanted to make, which we can decide how we address this on the record, because we didn't address this before. I apologize for this quagmire. Helpful team member over here, to your question previously about a geotech report, we do a geotech report for sites, and we will be doing one for this site. Typically, that's part of the building permit. So after zoning approval, then through the building permit process, that's when the structurals are done in the geotech. So a geotech would be performed as part of this project.
Well, and that answers the question, but insofar as it doesn't really play into the criteria that we're supposed to be considering as for the appeal, because it's kind of a limited, discussion anyway in terms of what you guys can, decide upon. So it's not really predicated on the geotech stuff anyway.
Right, right. To the extent that would give Councilor Berge some type of more surety of the structural, the stamped structural design of the breakpoint technology, that would be part of it.
And thanks for coming back up. And
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Any further dialogue or discussion on this piece at all? Okay. So, Joe, at this point, we need a motion to either...
Yeah, somebody can make a motion if they want.
Yep.
Page 8 has the recommended sample text.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, because I cannot.
I move that we overturn the Planning Commission's denial of the request based on one or more of the criteria. And then also we condition it with the breakpoint being high enough to prevent any portion of the structure from hitting the pumps. And I don't
The
know
gas
what the
pumps.
math on that would be and how you need that to be in the motion, because I'm not doing the math right now.
As a yeah, do we
To
need-
satisfy the distance, the shortest distance to the shortest pump? Or to
That.
the, okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay, nearest.
conditioning that the break point be located to prevent the structure hitting the shortest distance to the shortest pump. Now my-
Or nearest pump, I like the way.
Thank you. Nearest pump, not shortest, nearest, correct.
I need to make sure on a clarification with this, that if you're moving towards overturning, that you relate it back to the staff's conditions of approval, so all of those get applied as well.
That should be in our motion, shouldn't it?
Yes, I mean, it,
Okay, want to make sure of that.
Is that language in there? I don't have my screen up.
it's not written in this here, so I
What
just
Brian
need some,
Joe, are you scribing a motion?
I'm trying to at least do the amendment to the condition
and then.
relating to the breakpoint technology.
Okay, and then add in the conditions of the staff report as well. Yeah, that wasn't written in the sample motion, so.
So it'd be, I move to approve option 1 to uphold.
No,
Planning-
no,
Sorry.
option 2, to overturn.
Pardon me, thank you. Option 2, overturn the planning commission's denial of the request based on one or more of the career findings listed above, C, A through C under appeal review criteria with the added condition of a breakpoint being set high enough to where it will not reach the closest.
The nearest pole, or the nearest pump,
Nearest pump.
And including.
and including the staff conditions.
I think that was Brian's concern, right?
Yeah.
That we include all of theirs.
Include all those
We're
other
adding to
conditions.
And I'm doing a terrible job of scribing this, so give me a couple seconds.
You can have 30 seconds.
Nope, you're fine.
Ryan, what is the condition that talks about the breakpoint technology? Is it 8? I forget.
I believe it was 8.
I think that's right.
If you go back on your presentation here, Ryan, it'll be on there.
Yeah.
Yes,
condition
8, number 8.
Good job, Sean.
Way to go, Sean.
Thank you.
You still got it.
So the facility must have breakpoint technology with the breakpoint set at a
Yeah.
distance that it ensures the shortest distance to the nearest pump.
I'm just going to start again. My apologies, as I sit here.
We
trying to
need
do
some
the-
intermission music.
Yeah, exactly.
You got
You
some
got it.
Jeopardy music?
Okay, so
Gordon will add that later.
Yeah.
amending condition. I'm going to try to say it out loud so you guys hear and think I'm doing it right here. Amending condition number 8
Okay, yeah.
to add language. Thank you. That ensures the break point account for not allowing the height of the break point. How do you like my slow reading here? This is like,
I feel like we're getting a moment.
this is like a really, yeah, okay. So I'm saying amending condition number 8 to add language that ensures the break point count for the height of the break in a manner, my goodness, this is terrible, that
Ensures that it won't make contact.
yeah, exactly, ensures the break point. I think I'd like our new city administrators giving me some great ideas over here. There's that break point. Yeah, I know, disallows any contact
It's like a question grenade from you,
With-
Spoon. Come on.
the nearest pump in the event of a break. And, okay, now the second portion of the condition was and to
Include the staff conditions, right? Or the conditions
The
included
original
in the staff
conditions.
report.
Original
The
conditions of the planning commission as laid out in the staff report.
Yes.
original
We're just amending condition
conditions
number 8 is all.
Yeah, all we're doing is.
of approval offered in the staff report at the planning commission. Does that suffice?
Read it back one more time, please.
Or I will. Report. My goodness. So amending condition number 8 to add language that ensures the break point disallows any contact with the nearest pump in the event of a break, and to include the original conditions of approval offered in the staff report at the planning commission.
Perfect.
Perfect.
All right. May I come over there and bring it to you?
I was going to meet you halfway. I should have just had you. Are you going to stand here to interpret? This is. All right, let's try this again. Take 2. Now I need to find it. I move to overturn the Planning Commission's denial of the request based on one or more of the findings listed above, amending condition number 8 to add language that ensures the break point disallows any contact with the nearest pump in the event of a break, and to include the original conditions of the approval offered in the staff report at the Planning Commission.
I'll second that.
I'm on. Motion's been made by Counselor Spoon and seconded by Counselor Parker to overturn the Planning Commission's denial of the request based on one or more of the findings listed above, specifically amending condition number 8 to add language that issues the break point disallows any contact with the nearest pump in the event of a break, and to include the original conditions of approval offered in the staff report at the Planning Commission. Any further dialogue, discussion? Great.
No, I think we wordsmithed that to death.
We did. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
So that passes 4-2.
Joe, do we also have to write findings in this case?
No, because well, I believe, actually, yes. So for next time, let's
That'll be
have.
for next time.
Yeah.
Second reading.
Yeah, because what you'll want to do is adopt the findings and the conditions and the final order next time.
And you feel like you got enough to go on to craft those? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all for that. I appreciate that. Thanks, Ryan. Great job. All right, next on the agenda is resolutions. Ms. Melissa, you want to take us through those, or that one?
Yeah, you just have one. This is Resolution 1323, a resolution supporting the submission of a technical assistance grant to the Department of Land Conservation and Development.
Great. Joe or Scott, I want to elaborate on this one, or do you want me to take it?
Hold on. This is, I'm trying to clear my head now. Do you want me to talk about it at all? Or you can too, okay, because I know it's a grant that's being applied for.
Our senior planner, Sandy, did prepare a memorandum for you indicating that, and I think she actually attached.
Sorry, Brian, yeah, thanks.
I think she actually attached the entire grant application, which has already been submitted, and one of the conditions of that grant application was to gracefully, we've already gotten a letter signed by the mayor in support, but it also said the governing body should also pass a resolution in support. And so we want to cross all the Ts and Is, dot the Is to make sure that the grant application has everything they requested. And so that's why the resolution is before you, and the resolution indicates that you think it would be a good idea for us to pursue the technical economic opportunity analysis grant so that we can help guide Canby's future economic growth by helping to formulate with economic development strategies that might help identify barriers and the opportunities so that we form better future strategies to help our economic growth in the future.
Yeah, so this whole grant process is to be able to help us fund the analysis from an economic standpoint based on the housing needs assessment that we've done, moving into the aspect of the comp plan that we're going to be starting to open up here within the next couple of years. So this is part of that process, and it's getting grant funds to be able to pay for it, so we're not footing the entire nickel to make this happen in preparation of the comp plan. Councilor Parker.
I think we've discussed this before,
We did.
and I call it the Tetris approach to putting together our new comp plan, but if this grant goes through, it provides us with some funds to help us with the big project that is ahead of us.
Correct.
And Mr. Mayor, we also need it just to come into compliance with the state OARs and planning goal going.
Correct.
Yeah, so we need to do the work anyway. This helps pay for it.
Correct. Yep.
What Greg said.
Great. Any questions or comments? Questions for Brian? Any comments beyond that? Perfect. I will take a motion then.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 1323 supporting the submission of a technical assistance grant to the Department of Land Conservation and Development.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Councilor Hensley and seconded by Councilor Barwick to approve Resolution 1323 supporting the submission of a technical assistance grant to the Department of Land Conservation and Development. Any further conversation or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 6-0. Mr. City Administrator, your first staff report or update, if you have anything for us today.
Yeah, just activity report. Oh, yes, thank you. Learning new things like Outlook versus Gmail.
There you go.
Been very busy. Actually, Amanda and Rick did a nice job of making sure that they dumped things on me heavily, which is what I requested. So that was good. So got basically project download, all the key projects that are going. I met a lot of the key players and parties on that. Had a department head meeting, kind of laid out basic standards, how we're going to communicate, and standards for how I operate and what I expect of them. And then I've had individual meetings with most of the department heads. I'll get those cleared out probably a little bit into next week. And then just kind of getting out to the other groups. I had the library board meeting last night. That was a productive discussion. And then on action items, signed the CUB, the land swap, so we're actually getting those activated. We'll start working on all the attachments on the property description easements and get those documents in place.
Wonderful. Busy first week?
Yep.
Excellent.
Yep. Thanks.
Glad you're here, Scott. Thank you. Next opportunity for citizen input, if anybody wants to address us on anything that's transpired this evening. Not seeing any. Oh, yes. Did you?
I just have a feeling that maybe not all of the neighbors really knew what was happening, just because flyers were
You
put out.
need to come to the microphone here, please.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I just have a feeling, like if I was a neighbor, like I live, not too close, right? It just bothers me, you heard why. But I just bet you every single one of those neighbors that's affected do not know. And I really think, it's too late now, you guys have already voted, but I bet you that I think everybody should have had either a yes or no. Every neighbor should have been talked to in person and said yes or no. Or at least, not just flyers out there or on Facebook. I just happened to see it on Facebook yesterday or the day before. I mean, it just happened chance, and a lot of people don't look at Facebook. A lot of people, flyers go away, they fly away, or who knows what, they think it's junk mail. I think everybody should have been talked to individually. Wait till you find out when the neighbors that don't know about this are strongly affected. They are not going to be happy, I bet you. I mean,
So
I think that should have been more addressed.
So, Virginia, just to help understand some of the process here with something like this. So whenever we go into a public hearing on whether it's the planning commission or like we did tonight, there is, so the initial outset with the planning commission when this is being discussed, property owners are all notified within, is it 500 feet of the affected property. So in this case, where the tower is being built or whatever was going to be built there, all the residents within 500 feet of that project are notified of the hearing for that. So
Were they individually spoken to, or was it just by a flyer?
They are sent something in the mail to notify them of the public hearing.
Okay.
So that notifies them that this is happening, gives them the date when they can come in and address or provide comment, whether in person or written into the planning department.
I hope they got
Mr.
it.
Mayor,
As well
we
as
also
the
put signs
A-frame
up
sign that's on
so
the
that
property,
anyone driving
and
by
the public
is-
notice is put in the
Yeah.
newspaper and posted here at City Hall.
Yeah,
So there's
well, I
several
don't
different ways.
Get the newspaper and,
Sure.
you know, a lot of people don't. Well, I know, but I don't.
Yeah, so that's part of the notification process to that.
Sure.
And signage at the site.
And with any project, there is going to be those that were well-versed in the 11th hour of coming in and the conversation that occurs that we didn't know or wasn't, and those are our points that we're like, well, these are sent out and whatnot, and so
Sure.
it's not a perfect science, but we do the best that we can to notify those people around the area that's going to be developed.
Let's hope so.
And Mayor, if I may?
Yes, Councilor Parker.
Thank you for showing up. I mean, often we don't get to hear from real people with real concerns, that it's, you know, something or another. And you said that this was your first time here. I'm thrilled that you're here. I hope you keep a close eye on us, and next time we do something you don't like, I hope you'll be back here.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going, you talk about safety concerns, those, you were saying everything has to do with the structure, you know, but those high school students, you know, that was a safety thing too, and that's what you brought up, or somebody brought up, high school students, and I just don't know that that was really addressed.
Okay.
Because you know, whatever. Just hope nothing happens.
Yeah, us too.
I know our soil's pretty soft too, but that's a geology question.
Thank you, Virginia, appreciate it.
Welcome back.
Sorry, I know it's late, but I do want to say two things that weren't appropriate for the record, but I would like you to hear. Staff has been fantastic to work with.
Great.
Both Ryan and Brian have been great, so thank you both for your responsiveness and your informative feedback and communication to us. It's been helpful as an applicant through the process. It's been a pleasure to work with them, I know, for our whole team, so I wanted to make sure that we recognize them and their contribution to, regardless of what the outcome would have been, I would still give them that kudos because I appreciate it. And it's also nice to see and to be a part of a healthy and professional functioning council. I know you don't need to hear that from me, but I know when I was sitting there and outsiders would come in.
Can you speak? Can you say that again to the mic one more time, like slowly?
I was.
Carol.
That's a soundbite right there.
Yeah, we had a Carol too. And this is the first time I've been in an opportunity to be in front of a healthy, functioning professional council and to give that feedback. You don't need to hear it from me, but I know sitting in your position when people would come in and present and would give that feedback, it was appreciated. And it is appreciated. And I watched a lot of past videos of past meetings as well, so I know tonight was par for the course for you, so your community is lucky to have all of you, so thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate that.
Healthy and functional.
Where's her bar?
Yeah, where's your bar?
Where's your bar?
All right, it's Melissa action review.
Healthy and functioning.
Okay, so you have
Do I need to gavel you down, y'all? Let's not let it go to our heads.
Yes, sir.
Melissa, go
So
ahead.
tonight you've approved the consent agenda. You overturned the Planning Commission's denial of the request for a stealth monopole tower and adopted Resolution 1323.
Thank you. Joe, there is no exec session.
There is none.
I move
Great.
adjourn.
I will take a motion to adjourn.
I just moved it.
I didn't even ask for it, though. And then seconded by Councilor Varga. Fantastic. All those in favor of adjourning? All right. We are adjourned. Good night,
That was
Canby.
for
Thank you
Jason.
very much.